Um, so this video will be about installing and configuring DHCP on Windows Server 2019. Um, so some prerequisites you want before this is I'm just using two VMs, and one is going to be the server and one is going to be the client. On the server, you're going to want a static IP because you don't want the server to also be a DHCP client. So we have a static IP on the server here. And then here, we have a static IP right now, but once we set up DHCP, we'll have it automatically obtain the IP. And we also want to make sure that we are joined in the same domain as the server. And so we have that here. It's in my domain, charn.com. And this is the domain controller. So the first thing to start is, again, just like with any role or feature, you want to go ahead and install it. So we'll go ahead and do that right now. And click install. And while it's doing that, we'll just go over a little bit over what DHCP is. It stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. And essentially what it is that it's a network protocol that automatically configures the IP configuration of devices, like the IP address, default gateway, subnet mask, and all that. And it kind of uses like a leasing. It uses like a lease system where IP addresses are given out on a lease. And it's better obviously than static IP addresses because well, if you're obviously everything has its pros and cons, but the best or the most common scenario is that DHCP will be better because you don't have to assign static IPs because you could like risk a misconfiguration or duplicating IPs, and plus it will be really hard to maintain in a large company. Like for example, when we go to the mall and connect our phone to the Wi-Fi, it just leases out or gives an IP out to us, and it's simple and it's easy. Or if you plug your computer to the wall Ethernet port, you're just gonna get assigned an IP through DHCP. You don't have to statically assign it. So anyways, once DHCP is installed, you just want to go here to the triangle and complete the configuration. And we'll just use our user credentials to authorize the DHCP server. And then once that's done, you can go ahead and open up the DHCP like manager, I guess you could call it. So we'll just expand this. Oops. So now we're gonna go ahead and create what we would call a scope. And essentially, like it says here, it's a range of IP addresses assigned to computers requesting a dynamic IP address. So this is the first thing you need to do when you're doing DHCP, and we'll go ahead and do that. So you just want to right click on IPv4 here, or IPv6, but we're working with 4, and do new scope. So here you just can name the scope and describe it, so you know what it's for and what it does. We'll just name it scope 1 just because we're doing a demonstration here. So this is the range of IPs that the DHCP will lease out. So we'll just do like 10.0.0.1 to 10.0.0.10. Let's make the subnet mask /24. Exclusions. So this is, I guess, IPs you want to exclude because they're being used for something, or you don't want to use that IP address or that range for whatever reason. We don't need to do that right now, so we're fine. This is just the lease duration, how long the computer or whatnot will be connected or how long like the network will be available to the computer, right? So once the lease runs out, obviously if it's not renewed, you don't have an IP address and you're not in the network. So now we're just going to be configuring some DHCP options. For the router IP, I'll just make it the domain controller. The DNS servers and whatnot should be automatically kind of created for you or already inserted for you. Like below, we already have our 10.0.0.1 IP, which is the IP of this server, so we don't need to worry about it too much. And we don't have WINS servers, so we don't need to worry about this. And it'll ask, do you want to activate the scope now? If we say no, the only difference is we'll just have to activate it then by right-clicking and clicking activate, because otherwise it won't work. But we'll just activate it now. So now we are finished. Another thing here would be reservations. So you can reserve IPs. You can think of it as like making a reservation at a restaurant. You're kind of saving your spot. This is kind of the same thing, but you're saving a spot for the IP. A future IP, maybe like you'll need a IP or something reserved for the DHCP. Here it'll show what clients are using our IP addresses, so the address leases, and this is just a pool that we have where it starts and where it ends. So now we'll go ahead and change the network settings on our other machine to automatically use DHCP. So we'll change that to obtain an IP address automatically. Click OK. Just cancel all this, and now we can open PowerShell and do an IP config. Really slow right now. So now we can see we have an IPv4 address here of 10.0.0.2. The reason it's not 1 is because it's being used by this machine over here statically. And if we go to our leases here, we can see that we have clients, DHCP clients. Obviously this first one, like it says here, this address is already being used. So obviously we should have started the scope at like 0.2 or 0.3 instead of 1. So I just wanted to show that as an example. Can cause issues. And then down here we see the 10.0.0.2, which is being used by this machine right here. So that's pretty much it. We can see that our DHCP is working. We can see that when the lease is going to expire, and we had it set to 8 days. So this is 8 days from now. But yeah, this is just because our pool starts at 10.0.0.1, which is being used by this machine already statically. And yeah, so again, just like all things in Windows Server, there's a lot of other things you can do. I'm not gonna really go upon IPv6 or touch upon IPv6 in this video. But again, like you could just go to new scope and create your scope and all that, just like you did for IPv4. And another thing you want to keep in mind, along with all this other stuff like filters, like denying and allowing certain MAC addresses, or creating policies, is when you right click here, you want to make sure that your DHCP server is authorized. It's already authorized, which is why it says unauthorized. Um, and basically because in Active Directory environments, um, domain joined Windows DHCP servers must be authorized to service DHCP client requests, and it's also a security thing, because by forcing DHCP servers to be authorized, clients are protected from like rogue uh, domain joined Windows DHCP servers, which could affect them. And and more important things, you can back up your DHCP server here to whatever folder, um, and restore them and whatnot. So that's pretty much for my demonstration of installing and configuring a DHCP server in Windows Server 2019. So thank you.